So today we are covering our latest set of sections for the Oregon State Wildlife Action Plan, formerly known as Conservation Strategy. And these are technical reviews sections designed to talk about different habitat types and other things. Today we're going to talk about sagebrush habitats and grasslands. So here's just a brief agenda, going through a welcome and setting the stage. We'll talk about changes to the sagebrush section review, habitat trends analysis, some of the updates to the grasslands, and some key questions, technical support requested, and feedback and next steps. And then just to very briefly, here's some of the discussion agreements. I'm not going to go through all these today. If people have questions, feel free to raise your hand or be able to put your question in the chat. Thanks. So in general, the habitat sections are comprised of the following components. There's a discussion of the ecoregions where these different habitats are found, followed by a conservation overview and a discussion of limiting factors and recommended approaches. And then we're asking people if there are additional resources or data gaps that we haven't identified. That's super helpful for us to know for this process. And so just some logistics. This is an example of the text, and we're just asking people to provide their comments with a number reference. So if you're providing comments, please add the hey from section, number 8 through number 12. This needs additional information, or we'd like to suggest the following language. That makes our life easier for going through the process of integrating comments. And then some of the things, so we'll start out with sagebrush habitats. Some of the things we've changed is we added an East Cascades ecoregion section. There's a much more robust conversation about limiting factors and approaches, so there's quite a bit more information. We've added the addition of a habitat trends analysis, which we'll look at in a little more detail in a little bit, and then updated references and resources. So there's just some of the things that have been changed since this section's been edited. So what's the habitat trends analysis? This is work that we did in partnership with the Institute for Natural Resources. And we really wanted to be able to look at vegetation change over a period of time. And so we compared 3 primary baseline maps and then some additional resources. And those include pre-settlement, turn of the millennium, and then contemporary, with 2016 being the most recent information available. And so these were used to be able to make some comparisons between how vegetation classes have changed spatially over time, and to be able to kind of just make some evaluations where feasible on what's the impact and information that we want to know about that. Any questions? So in this particular case, and this kind of applies both to grasslands and sagebrush habitats, is that there was a more in-depth look at what has the transition to juniper woodland looked like in these spaces. And so they were able to compare all 3 sets of maps, and what comes up is that the total area of juniper woodland, unsurprisingly, has increased very significantly, 153%. And then there was a small decrease. That was between the 1815 to 1937 period to 1998. And then there's been a small decrease since 1998. And so that's the primary result from this section. The most common classes that transitioned, they looked at more than just grasslands and sagebrush, but sagebrush and grassland have been impacted the most. And with the change in 38%, big sagebrush and bunchgrass steppe making up about 38% of the what's currently considered juniper woodlands, and that all of the not doing a good job of explaining this today. My apologies. All of the areas mapped originally, over 66% of those areas have been converted to juniper woodlands. It doesn't mean that that represents all of the areas that were sagebrush and grasslands. It's just of the original mapping, 66% of that is now classified as juniper woodlands. Is there a question on that one? So some of this reflects, substantial changes in vegetation. There's always a note that there is some variation, and it can actually be hard to separate out juniper woodlands from surrounding vegetation. So take these numbers as trends and not as an absolute. There's definitely margin of error. But there's has been decreases in juniper, and with the assumption that that has been caused by some significant effort by BLM Forest Service and other partners to do juniper removal on the landscape. So that's an example. There's a little bit more information in the text, but this is kind of the core take home of this particular analysis. And so then when we transition to grasslands, there were less changes in the grasslands piece, more updates. But then out of that process, we came up with a couple of really key questions. And what we'd like folks to be able to provide information on is, have we captured the range of grasslands and associated ecoregion accurately? Like, are we missing information? There's some mention of Cascades and West Side, although a lot more detail on East Side habitats. We'd like to know if there are any limiting factors that need additional updates. Have we missed something significant? Is there more information that would be helpful to add to this? Are there important associated species for grasslands that need to be updated? And what additional resources should be included? And so we've added some resources, but it would be good to, I think, particularly for grasslands, to have additional information available. So what we're asking for is people's help in ensuring the accuracy of distribution, conservation needs, limiting factors, and recommended approaches. Basically, please, look things over and see if there's things that need to be changed, adjusted, or additional information that's needed. We really appreciate having references for any, new resources, peer-reviewed articles, and references that would be helpful both for the general public and if people want to learn more about a particular topic. And then if you see any significant data gaps, that's super helpful. So then what does feedback look like on this? So we're asking for folks to fill out an online feedback form, and that's found at the swap revision page listed at the bottom. And for this, we're giving people about 2 weeks. And so they're asking for comments no later than May 9th. And if folks fill out the form, they get sent to the right people to be able to do the adjustments to the sections. So then next steps, we have a couple more conversations coming up. We have the key conservation issues for pollution, climate change, and invasive species next week. And then for land use, water quality and quantity, and disturbance regimes for the following week. And then comments can either go through the form we just talked about, or you're welcome to email them. And these are the best ways for people to be able to provide their input. So just a brief, where are we in the timeline? We've been working through a lot of different processes. We are in this February to May window, we're working on getting all of these sections out to different partners and being able to ask for their feedback and then to integrate their feedback, with the goal of having that ready with a final draft in July to go to our commission in August. And then this will end up going to the Fish and Wildlife Service in October. And then thank you for your time. With that, I am going to wrap up this part of the presentation, and then we can just have a conversation.